All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us for Job Search Strategies 201. Are you tired of applying to online jobs and getting no response? Most job seekers feel frustrated with the job search process. Take control of your job search by deploying a proactive strategy. Learn what to do beyond simply applying for jobs online. Discover how to create some avenues of opportunity for yourself. So today's presentation is led by Kelley Dadah, who's the founder of KMD Creation Solutions. Kelley is an International Coach Federation professional certified coach, a certified resume writer, and a certified DISC communication specialist. She has over 15 years of experience as an executive recruiter, division manager, and career coach. Kelley began her career as a coach and mentor at Robert Half International, one of the top staffing firms in the world. She later served as an executive recruiter at a training and development company, working with Fortune 500 companies. And Kelley, that bio might have been a little dated. I know I've had you back. I think this is your third or fourth time speaking to the group, so feel free to correct anything, any mistakes there. But all 50 of us, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Kelley for joining us today. And Kelley, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see so many faces today. So thank you for joining me. So we're going to talk about job search strategies, and it's something near and dear to my heart. So Robert hit most of the points of what I've done in my past, and currently for the past 2.5 years, I've been working at an ed tech company called Thrive DX, creating career development courses. So designing content around job search strategy, resume writing, networking. So job search strategy, along with the other components of career development, it's something near and dear to my heart because it's a critical piece of the job search, but it's not something that everybody does. Or actually, I would say a lot of people don't do this. And if you get into the practice of creating a job search strategy, when you go to look for a job, it makes the process that much easier and less stressful. So I'm going to turn on my slides here and share my screen. Let's see, make sure I have the right one. I have 2 screens, so bear with me. Robert and I just tested this out, and I wasn't very successful. So I'm going to try this screen, see if it works. Do you see the slideshow?
Yeah, perfect, Kelley. Yes.
Perfect. All right, good. So this is job search strategies. And I told you a little bit about me. So one of the things that I'm excited to tell you is that I got this current position, and actually the past 10 years, by designing a job search strategy and being very thoughtful in my approach, as a combination of online job search as well as networking. And we're going to talk about that and really help you create your own customized job search strategy. So our learning objectives today, what do I want you to get out of this presentation? It's basically how to plan your daily and weekly activities, how to develop a variety of job search methods, and to create tracking tools to record your progress. So it's really becoming organized and thoughtful in your process in order to figure out, where do I want to go next? How do I want to land this next job? And by creating the job search strategy, that will take you forward in, when you look for jobs in the future. So one of the elements is, there's a huge stress factor when looking for a position. And when you know how to search for a job and you know what to do and what to put in place, it does make it less stressful. So our agenda today, why you want to create a job search strategy, how to get organized, developing tracking tools, and creating avenues of opportunity. And then also, one of the biggest components is setting SMART goals, and we'll dive into exactly what that means. So why do you want to create a job search strategy? So the first thing is to beat the hiring funnel. And that's I have an infographic on the next slide, and we'll dive into that and what it represents and what is a hiring funnel to tap into the hidden job market. So these are positions that aren't publicly posted. And there are quite a few out there. So sometimes employers, they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to have an influx of resumes come in when when they have an open position. They want to tap into their network, right? And they want to have their employees refer people. So these are positions that you wouldn't know about unless you talk to somebody. So that's the hidden job market. And JobVite is a website, and they said that most applicants that apply for jobs on the job board or career sites, 35% found job postings on social media. 50% of people that had applied for jobs found them from friends, and 37% said they learned from them from their job network. So there's a pretty large percentage of jobs that people learn about through other methods rather than just the public postings. So the other thing is that you will decrease your job search time. So by having a methodology and having this, really thoughtfully presented and structured, you can actually decrease your time. And then lastly, you want to be proactive. So what I mean by being proactive is that when we apply to jobs online and we sit back and wait, we're no longer in charge of our job search. We're no longer in charge of where we want to go and what we want to do when it comes to employment. The employers are in charge. So by being proactive and having a proactive strategy, you actually take that control back, and you are in charge of your job search and when you get a job and where you want to get a job, where you want to work. So the next slide is the hiring funnel that I talked about. So this is interesting. I remember when I was working, I used to work at Holt International Business School in Boston, and I was there for about 10 years. And we did this exercise where we were trying to figure out, well, what was the percentage of applications, how many of those people actually got seen, right? So if their resumes were actually reviewed and then passed on to a recruiter. So on average, let's say that 262, that was the average as far as resumes received for a position. So I think it's usually 260, 270 plus. 22 of those were received a phone screen from a recruiter, and then 6 of those were sent to a hiring manager. 4 were interviewed, and then 1 was extended a job offer. So basically, this hiring funnel represents, if you're applying online, that's your competition. As opposed to if you are being proactive and you're talking to somebody and you're trying to have conversations or get referrals, then you actually come into maybe the sent to the hiring manager, right? So you're one of those 6 people, so that you're not one of those 262 or the phone screen, or maybe you go straight to that interview. So the methodology for the job search strategy is that you increase your chances and you really, beat out the competition and skip some of these steps because you have, again, been proactive. You have a recommendation, a referral. You've met somebody, you've reached out and talked to somebody, as opposed to just sending in your application or your resume where it's just a piece of paper and they don't have an opportunity to know you. So one of the things, and what I like to do, and actually with coaching my clients over the past 10 years, organizing your day. So it's really simple. If you organize your day, then you feel more accomplished and you feel more organized. So creating a workspace, that's the number one. So when COVID hit and we were all at home, I've been working remotely for about 10 years. So I had a combination of being in an office and going on campus and also working at home, but I didn't really have an office space set up. And then when I went fully remote, I was like, oh man, I need to really find a space so I'm productive. So when I was coaching my clients, I would say, where are you working? how are you organizing your day? But, what's your space? What's a good space for you? And some of them didn't want to be at home. They were in the kitchen. It was cluttered. They didn't feel comfortable. So I would recommend go to a coffee shop, go to Starbucks or Brugger's Bagels or wherever that's comfortable. So I'm in the Bedford area, and there's a Lexington Starbucks that's huge. They have a fireplace. So I used to go there because I needed to get out of the house sometimes. The library was another really great area to work. So they had tables set up and they had soft lighting and it was quiet. So finding, it might be a combination. It might be setting up a workspace at home that's comfortable for you, but making it sure that it's yours and it's carved out and it's something that's inviting, that when you go into that space, you feel good about it and you feel like you can be productive. And if it's not at home, then find somewhere where you could go. I'm a huge fan of the library and coffee shops, like just one of my favorite places to go. And I still do that sometimes, even though I'm working full time. If I'm working on projects, sometimes I'll go to Whole Foods. Now that that's back open, they have a huge section where I am where you can, instead of having lunch, I'll grab coffee and I get a long table and I'll work from there. So I think just from get into that mindset, it's really critical that you have a place that you can go and you can feel good about, because that's that positive mindset, right? So when you sit down, you're like, you know what, it feels good being here. Like I'm going to really put forth some great effort today. So it's super simple step, but I think it's really important in order to be effective. Actually, hold on 1 second. I'm not sure what happened to there we go. Okay. So the next one is to create a strategy. So you want to develop goals. And what are goals and what does that mean? So one of the things that when I'm teaching my students how to create a resume, we talk about developing SMART goals. And I said, well, you know what? I think this is really critical for the job search process and thinking about what do you want to do on a daily basis and developing your SMART strategy. So what's this, outlining your story, what's the situation? Where do you want to find a job and what are your targets, right? And then creating metrics. And I'll show you some samples about this. So the metrics are, what are the concrete details, right? So how many conversations do you want to have? How many jobs do you want to look up? What creating a target list, and I'll dive into that in a little bit. But what are the metrics, right? So what do you want to accomplish on a weekly basis? And then what are the actions that you want to take? Do you want to go to virtual networking events? Thankfully, there are live networking events that you can go to as well. You can go to a combination of the two. Webinars. So what are the actions that you want to take on a weekly basis? And then what are the results that you want to get? So basically, like creating these SMART strategies, and what's the overall, the tie-in? It's like, what's the final stage? What's the overall outcome that you want to happen for that particular week? And by designing these goals each week, you'll feel better, and you want to create goals that you can accomplish, right? So you don't want to say to yourself, well, by the end of the week, I want to get a job, because we know that's the end result, right? So obviously we want to find a job, but there needs to be steps before that. So what can how can you break it down and create those goals on a weekly basis that you feel good about accomplishing, and that gets you one step closer to that ultimate goal? And your ultimate goal, again, you want to be specific and intentional on your purpose. So the ultimate goal, the tie-in, basically, I want a job. Where do you want a job? What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to work for? What's the kind of work that you want to be doing? So by being specific in what you want to do, then you can create those goals and those steps and how you're going to get there. So this is the tricky part. It's, how do you create those specific goals? So, the S is specific, detailed goals, right? So we're going to walk back to the resume portion. So thinking about your personal branding materials, And personal branding is just a fancy way of saying, social media profiles, which is LinkedIn, and your resume. So does your resume need to be fine-tuned? Do you need to update it, right? Are you the type of person that can say, all right, I'm going to spend Wednesday and I'm going to completely update my resume and review it and start sending it out? Or do you need to take time to section it out because it gets a little bit overwhelming, and you can't do that, knock it out in one day? So maybe it's, Tuesday, you're going to create your professional summary, which actually we call now a targetable summary. Maybe you're going to create that and you're going to revise the formatting. And then Wednesday, you're going to revise your professional experience to make sure that you have very specific results-oriented statements. You want to make sure that your bullet points and maybe research resume trends and make sure that your resume is reflective of what's out in the market right now. So, starting back about not just networking and figuring out what jobs I'm applying to, but are your materials up to date? That's part of your job search strategy to make sure that your resume is up to date and reflects what you want to do now. Maybe you need to take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Does your about statement reflect what you want to do and where you want to go? Does it tell your story? And the LinkedIn statement, the LinkedIn about section is a great opportunity. It's almost like a cover letter. So you have 2,000 characters, use them. Talk about, hey, this is what I'm doing now. I'm looking for an opportunity in this area. This is what I've done in the past. And these are the opportunities I'm looking for the future. And here's how I'm going to get them. And then you add with the call to action. Let's connect. So, taking some time to maybe revise your LinkedIn profile. The banner should be reflective of what you want to do in your space now and having an inviting photo. So, your specific detailed goals should include everything within your job search, not just networking or sending out applications. So really being thoughtful in what do I need to do to make sure that my social media profiles, my resume, it's up to date. So when I do start interviewing and having conversations, that it's reflective of all my skills and talents and where I want to go. And then measurable goals to track your progress. So this is more of the networking piece of it. So how many people do you want to connect with? Who do you want to connect with? So an example is send out 5 LinkedIn connection requests daily, right? So that's a small goal and that's a small measurable goal, but maybe you're new to LinkedIn and you only have a couple of connections. So it could be greater. Maybe it's sending out 25 LinkedIn connections or posting on LinkedIn, talking about whatever your field is. So I do a lot of work with cybersecurity students in software development. So I'm always encouraging them to post about what are the projects and labs that you're doing, what are the, as far as research that you're doing in the marketplace for cyber, I encourage them to talk about that and post about that to showcase their knowledge. So whatever industry you're in, starting conversations or joining, I'm going to join a LinkedIn group this week, or if you're part of LinkedIn groups that are active, posting in those LinkedIn groups as well and starting conversations so people get to know who you are and they understand, the breadth of your knowledge within your given field. And then achievable and reasonable. So one of the things that I've learned over the years in coaching my clients is that they would go big, they're like, go big or go home. But if you set goals that aren't achievable, it's just going to eat away at your self-confidence. Like, well, what? It's just deflating at that point. So you want to make sure that you're setting goals that are reasonable and achievable. And not unrealistic. So one industry chat a week. I think that somebody who's like, well, I'm going to get 12 interviews next week or this week, I think that's not an achievable goal. So you want to set yourself up for success. You don't want to make it too easy, but you want to create goals in your job search that that you can achieve them and keep, it's supposed to propel you to keep moving forward. Again, and being realistic and within your reach. So what is attainable? So going to a virtual event is extremely attainable. One of the sites that I like best is eventbrite.com. So it has a ton of local events on there, both in person and virtual. And the great thing about virtual, if it's done correctly, they have breakout rooms, so there's icebreakers. So you have an opportunity to meet and chat with people where you wouldn't normally in a live setting. So one of the things that I found when I would network in more of that live setting, I'd go up and introduce myself, but I didn't always meet a ton of people. One of the things I think is great about virtual networking is that it's very structured. So you have an opportunity to talk to people and connect with them, connect with everybody on that particular event, and then connect with them afterwards. So, and you don't have to leave the house, which is the best thing too. So from a time perspective, it's great. And I think you get an opportunity to meet so many more people. So is it feasible to attend 10 networking events in a week? Probably not. So again, making sure that these goals are realistic and within your reach. And then lastly, so time frame. So you want to create a time frame and set deadlines. And, again, it's where you don't want to make the time constraints too restrictive, but you also don't want to give yourself so much time that it doesn't make sense. So thinking about, what is reasonable, what's a good deadline for me? So resume updated by week 4 of my job search. So maybe you need to completely overhaul your resume and you want to give yourself enough time. And that, okay, a month is a good time frame for me. I know that I can accomplish it in a month's time frame, or maybe it's 2 weeks that I want to get a rough draft together. And then, I'll continue to revise it. So hopefully this gives you an understanding as far as how specific you should be in creating those goals and how you should in creating those attainable goals. And I think that's really the key word in making sure that your goals are attainable. There's been so many times where I've coached clients where they've created these pretty hefty goals and they've felt defeated when they didn't complete them. And I said, well, I think we need to revisit. I think that this is just unrealistic for any one person to do unless you're like Tony Robbins. So it's, I think that, again, taking a look at what's my work week, what does my week look like, from a personal level, from a networking standpoint, what can I do and what can I accomplish in that week? So if you're juggling events and kids and activities, what can I do and at what time, and then scheduling that and blocking that time out. So here's an example as far as weekly goals. So maybe it's secure 25 new LinkedIn connections, requesting 1 industry chat. And you could use these goals to, just make them specific to what you're doing and maybe, as far as what industry, join a LinkedIn group, attend a virtual networking event. So if you want to attend 1 virtual networking event, you can count this one. Post commentary for 5 consecutive days on LinkedIn and create a blog post. And one thing that, I think if you are either creating content on LinkedIn, which is great, and then you can go in and you can respond to people that are responding to what you've created, or, going into, who are the thought leaders in your industry and what are they posting, and engaging that way and engaging in conversation. So when people start to see your name, it just gives you more visibility, and you have a better chance of maybe people coming to you instead of you doing so much outreach. But these are, this is a great example of weekly, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think is attainable for a week. Or you can dial it back, or you can ramp it up. Maybe it's secure 100 new LinkedIn connections and request 2 industry chats. And by an industry chat, I mean, it's a nicer way of saying informational interview. The one thing with an informational interview or industry chat, you're getting information and you're thinking about, well, what do I want to know about this person? What questions can I ask them? And you don't want to ask them, oh, I'm looking for, obviously they'll know that if you're exploring opportunities and you're in the job market, I think that's a given, but thinking about how do I want to move forward? What do I want to know about the industry? Maybe they have an understanding of where the jobs are and maybe they actually have openings, but once you get into the habit of having conversations, and they should be conversational. It shouldn't be like an interview. And requesting these conversations, you'll get more comfortable. And it's a really great tool for your job search strategy and networking. And I think the LinkedIn, if you have the time to go into the LinkedIn groups and connect with LinkedIn groups there, again, to showcase your talents and your skills, you can start conversations with these people. You can start them offline. You can connect with them offline, even if they're not a first or second degree connection. If you're in a group with them, you're able to connect with them. So it's a really great way to continue to network, just in a smaller setting. And again, we talked a lot about virtual networking events, which I'm a huge fan of. And then even creating a blog post, right? So I did that for a while when I was more on the coaching side. I would blog about different topics. So it was job search strategy, it was resumes, it was LinkedIn profiles. And each week I would create a blog post and I would post it on my website, and then I would send it out to LinkedIn and I would send it out to different sites. I would post it on Facebook and Instagram so people could click on that link and read the blog post. And it was really easy. So if you enjoy writing, it's something that you might want to consider doing. And you can even post something on LinkedIn and then have a separate blog post, where you have maybe in longer form and more detail about the topic that you're talking about. So these are just some ideas and some strategies and how you can create your daily, weekly, and monthly goals. So here's a sample schedule. So Monday, from 8 to 9, this is what I want to do. And I'm pretty systematic. And for me personally, I like to have each hour blocked out. Whether I get to it or not, that's okay. But I know, here's what I'm going to do in that day. And here's the time that I have set aside in order to do it. So it might be, again, going back to creating your personal branding material. So maybe creating or revising your resume and reviewing the revisions that you've done, and sending out those LinkedIn connection requests. And then maybe it's join an industry-related LinkedIn group. And then make sure you review your LinkedIn notifications, because that's a great tool for networking. So who's posted, who's reached out to, who's posted something about maybe events or comments where you can reach out and connect with them. So making sure that you go through your notifications or messages if you have them, and then posting comment and content on social media. This can be LinkedIn, it could be Discord, it could be Twitter or Instagram. And I think that depending upon what your field is, there's different social media sites other than LinkedIn that are more specific to different industries. So if you're comfortable, posting on some of those other sites, I think LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to create a really robust profile that you can pare down and use for other social media sites. So another thing is to create a company target list, and I'll dive in that towards the end of the presentation. But this is a really great way. It's what are those companies that you would love to work for, right? But they don't have anything posted, and creating that running list and targeting, maybe on LinkedIn. So who would be the department head? Who can you talk to? And start to kind of chip away at that particular company. And you should have a list of those. And then maybe you only have half a day on Monday. And then you have something Tuesday morning, and then you have half a day. And maybe you only want to do 4 or 5 hours a day. I think that's a lot when you're looking for a job. I think 4 or 5 hours is pretty hefty. So Tuesday, maybe it's review new job postings, and then following up on applications and LinkedIn connections, industry chats and requests and interviews. So it's all of your follow-up. And then you might find, I'm reviewing new postings, and that might take me till 3 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, I'm going to do follow-up and LinkedIn connection requests. And then go to figure out what networking events I want to go to. And then again, leaving some time for revising your personal branding materials if you need that. So there's a lot of different aspects. There's a lot of different ways that you could schedule your day, depending upon how much time you have, or maybe that you have 2 days or 3 full days during the week. So you want to start at 8 or 9 o'clock and wrap up at like 4 or 5. Maybe you want to do that Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and the other days you have other things going on. So it's really how you want to schedule it. But I think if you start with your goals first and then you fit that into a schedule, makes it a lot easier. And it makes it more manageable knowing that what you have to attack during that week. So I created this in Excel. Just something that it's a sample tracking tool. So you do want to track what you're applying to. I don't know if this has happened to anyone in the past, but when I've applied to jobs online, I know that they have disappeared. So then I'm like, well, who's calling me and what are they calling me for? So even if you have the description link, sometimes it disappears. So I think that if it's a job that you're really interested in, maybe even cut and paste the job description somewhere. But writing down what's the company, what's the job title, adding the description link. When did you send in the application? And did you send a LinkedIn connection request? And then you always want to follow up 3 times before you completely write them off. So first follow-up, second follow-up, third follow-up, and then the final status. After the third follow-up, if they happen to reach out to you and you're still available and want to talk to them, fantastic. But I think after that point that, it's not worth your time anymore to follow up with them. And basically what you want to do is if you have a person to follow up with, great. If not, then go on LinkedIn and that can be part of your strategy, right? So one of your part of your schedule could be, utilize going through your tracking tool, following up on companies that were a first follow-up second follow-up or third follow-up. And maybe revising your tracking tool. And this is just a sample, so you could revise it and create something that works for you. There's also other sites out there. I think HubSpot has a tracking tool that you can utilize. There's Hunter has a job search tracking tool. So I think that there's sites out there. So if you wanted to utilize something that's online, that's not an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, that you could use more of like a CRM with some of these other organizations. So creating alternate channels is something that's really critical, besides applying online. And I talked a little bit about this throughout the presentation, but we'll dive a little bit more into it. So networking. I'm a huge fan of networking, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable or awkward. But the more you network and the more you grow your network, the easier it is to get a job. So the past 10 years, the majority of my positions have been through networking. So when I was at Robert Half, I left and I wanted to go into internal recruiting and talk to my old boss. And he said, hey, come work for us. So I did. And then my other friend from Robert Half was at another organization, and she recruited me twice to go work for the organization that she was at. When I was at Holt International Business School, they asked me to come for 3 months for a contract job. And I said, absolutely. And I was there for 10 years. The company that I'm at now, I had worked for my boss previously at a different ed tech company. And I hadn't talked to her for a while. And I said, what are you up to now? She said, oh, I just started this new job. She said, I'm not even recruiting yet, but she's like, I was going to reach out to you. It's funny that you reached out to me first. And I was a week and a half later, I was working there. So the power of networking, and mine had started from either online, people that I had worked with, and it's just was following up and telling them, here's what I'm up to, here's what I'm looking for, what's new with you. So it was very relaxed and conversational, but keeping up with that networking, making sure that I was in touch with everybody that I had worked with that I had good relationships with. So that's what I would recommend, when it comes to networking. If you haven't reached out to your network, that's something that you should do. People like to hear from people from the past. I had worked with him, I think it's like 12 years ago, hadn't talked to him, reached out and asked me what I was up to and asked me for a referral. And I said, absolutely, I'm happy to give you a referral. I wasn't like, why are you contacting me? I haven't talked to you in 12 years. I was more than happy to talk to him. So you would be surprised. I would definitely recommend networking, reaching out to your network. Who have you had good relationships with? You don't have to be best friends or talk to them all the time, but who did you have a good relationship with in your previous roles, and working out to them and reaching out to them and letting them know what you're up to now and what you're looking for. Job postings. So this is a great source if used correctly. So you apply for the job online, but you want to follow up and say, and not just like, hey, I applied to this job. I was wondering if you saw my resume. You take that opportunity, right? So you find out who's the hiring manager, who's the recruiter, and you take the opportunity to tell them about the value you can add to the organization. It's almost like a short cover letter. I applied for this job. I'm really excited about your organization. I think this is a great fit, as far as my skills and experience. Here's what I think I can bring to the table. Take a look at my resume and my LinkedIn. If you think I would be a good match, would be happy to have a conversation. Short and simple, but they're a really great source of, I would call them warm leads. That there's a job there and it's open, but take the initiative and being proactive instead of sending your resume in and just waiting for somebody to call you and having your resume kind of like sit in their applicant tracking system. Agency recruiters, I used to be one. They are a really great resource. Now, they are looking for what's the right fit for my client right now, but they can give you information about the market, what jobs are they seeing, what's the salary, and they could very well have something available for you. So I would definitely tap into agency recruiters and making sure that they're the ones that are specific to your industry. So, there's ones for finance and technology, marketing, and utilizing these agency recruiters, again, as a source of information. And then finally, target companies. So I had alluded to that. There was creating a target company list was part of the job search process and creating a job search strategy. And it's very simple. You create a target company list. What are the companies that you would really like to work for? And why do you want to work for them? Where's the location? And just creating the list and who do you know there? If you don't know anybody, that's fine. Then you go on LinkedIn and you start networking and you add that to your job search tracking tool, right? So I reached out to Nike, and this is the person that I reached out to. I reached out to them 3 times. I haven't heard back. Now I'm going to reach out to this person. So by creating that target list, again, it gives you more control. You can target your dream jobs or companies that are near and dear to your heart, or maybe just location wise, right? So maybe there's an office park near your house and you take a look and you know that there's like 10 or 20 companies there that would be a great fit for you. Those would go on your target list, right? And just adding those to your target list and creating that strategy along with these other methodologies. So those are all the pearls of wisdom I have on job search strategy. I think that I covered just about everything. I do want to recommend that when it comes to the target list, there's really a great book. It is called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. And it talks more about how to create a target list and how to systematically approach your target list. What's the best way? What's the quickest way? So if you're interested in creating this target list along with these, the other methods that were discussed in this presentation, I would definitely recommend this book. And I'm going to actually pop into the chat here, 2-Hour Job Search. Now, he talks a lot about recent grads, but I think that, thank you, Robert. You're way ahead of me. So just he does talk about recent grads. So the book, I think when he was creating it, because he is at Duke University, I think he's the executive director of career development now. So it was really based on the undergrad, but what I did is when I read it, I thought this is a great book, and you can definitely customize it and use it. Anybody can use it basically. Thank you, Laura. So it's an easy read, and it really does have some great tools in there. So I'm going to stop my screen and open it up for questions.
All right, Kelly, we've got about 18 minutes or so for questions. Let's see, this question was sent to me directly, so I will, the person will remain anonymous. Says, I've run into job openings where there was an inside candidate and the outside search was conducted just to meet HR requirements. How do you sniff out these kinds of situations?
That is a great question. So I don't know if you can sniff out those types of situations. People run into that all the time. I don't think there's really an opportunity to understand whether or not, I think you can ask, right? So I think if that's more of like the interview process. So I don't think if you are targeting a company to know whether or not there's internal candidates, I think that's more of a conversation when you are speaking with the company or speaking with the recruiter. Who else is in the running? Where do I rank in the running? What is your process and what is your timeline? So I think, asking those questions within the interview process. That was funny, Cindy. Somebody just messaged me that ThriveDX reached out to her. So let's connect, Cindy. I'm happy to talk to you. So I think it's just a matter of fleshing it out is in the interview process, and asking specific questions. You can't really do that when you're targeting companies, right? And when you're creating your job search strategy. So it's who's in the running, where do I stand? Do you have internal candidates that have applied for the position? So I think asking those questions.
Sandy asks, so many jobs being advertised are remote. And if you're applying on LinkedIn, for example, it's very difficult to find out who the hiring manager is. So do you have any suggestions?
So I think one of the things that it's just a lot of research. So going into LinkedIn and, who is in that particular department. So I think it's what department. So if you're applying for an HR position, who's the VP of HR, who's the director of HR, who's the HR manager, and you might not get to the right person the first time, but at least they'll be able to direct you. And if you can't find somebody, I think that the next best thing is going to the recruiter who's recruiting for the position. So who can you talk to that is recruiting for the role? So we like to call it reverse engineering in LinkedIn. So what I would do is I pull up the company and I look at who are all the players in this particular company, who are my first degree connections, who are my second degree connections, third, and so on. So I start with first degree. Do I know anybody that I'm connected to that I can reach out to? And then I go to second and third. And then if I don't see anybody at all, then I say, all right, you can always get to the recruiter, and then I'll talk to the recruiter. So I think utilizing that approach, that reverse engineering, taking a look at the company as a whole and seeing who's there that you can talk to, who you're connected to, what department are you gravitating towards, right? So even if you always want to talk to somebody in a managerial position to start. And then if, can you talk to somebody who's in a managerial position for that particular department? And then again, if all else fails, then connecting with the recruiter.
So I'm going to read you two people's questions because I think they're similar. Sue says, do you recommend phone calls to follow up or email? What is the best way to find contact information for a panel of interviewers? And then Jim asks a similar question. Please talk about follow-up after you've applied. Who do you reach out to? How? Oh, actually, I guess these are somewhat different. So I think I'm sorry, I was trying to save time, but I think I
That's
messed up.
okay.
So no, so these are different questions. All right. So Sue wants to know, do you recommend phone calls to follow up or email? And what is the best way to get the contact information for a panel of interviewers? So in Sue's case, she's been on the interview. Okay. How should she follow up?
So I think if you've been on the interview, and you've sent a thank you email, then if you feel like the interview went well and you had a good rapport, I don't think there's any harm in leaving a message, in a phone call. I think we've come full circle, right? So it was like way back in the day, it was like phone call and people got tired of the phone, and then it was email was great and text was great. So I think we've come full circle where people don't call people anymore. It's all electronic. It's all through either email or text. So personally, I would welcome a message. I would welcome a phone call. So I think maybe leaving a message and then, following up with an email if you haven't heard back after you've left the message.
And to Sue's point, if she's sending an email, but she was interviewed by multiple people, does one email suffice, or should she email to every single person she was interviewed by?
So I think, is there one person, who would you be working for specifically? And I would start with that person.
Right.
I would probably email that person.
All right, so let me jump to Jim's question. So in Jim's case, he's applied but hasn't interviewed yet. He is not interviewed. So Jim says, please talk about follow-up after you've applied. Who do you reach out to? How? Through email, LinkedIn, or is there another way?
So there's many ways. So either, I have to tell you a story. So when I was recruiting, everybody would email me. That was just, they would follow up, they would find me on LinkedIn. And I got a message, a voicemail one day from this woman. And she said, hey, I wanted to tell you, she's like, I know that you probably are inundated with resumes, but here's my name. And just wanted to let you know that I applied for the job. And just thought it'd be easier if I told you a little bit about myself. And if you think I'm a good match, then give me a call. And I was like, wow. This was easier than looking at her resume. This was a great message. So I called her. I set up an interview and we wound up hiring her. So I think that if you can find the correct person, that if you're comfortable with that, you can leave a message, but it's not, hey, I applied to this job. It's what value, here's the value I can offer you. I've applied to this job and let me tell you a little bit about myself. Right. So like your elevator pitch, or the same thing with an email or LinkedIn. It's always, here's the value that I can add to your organization. Here's why you should hire me. Here's some of the great things that I've done. And how do you find these people? It might be trial and error. So it's, again, going on LinkedIn, taking a look at the company, who's working in the company that's in a position of hiring, right? So you want to look at those people that are manager and above, starting with your department. And it might not be the right person, but you say, I've applied to this position, I'm really interested in, here's a little bit about myself, would love to connect. I'm not sure if you're the right person, but if you are, I would love to connect. If you're not, do you know who I can talk to? Yeah. And that's what I would recommend.
Great. Eric says, I'm attending a 2-day industry conference in my field in a few weeks. I plan to bring some business cards and shake some hands. Usually I enjoy the lectures and events so much that I actually forget to network. So what is your advice to make the best use of this opportunity? So going to a 2-day industry conference, what's the best way to network here?
I think that sounds like a gold mine. Bring tons of business cards. The other thing that people do as well is they'll connect on LinkedIn with their phone. So it's like, instead of business cards, so you're getting that person. If they don't give you a business card, connect with them on LinkedIn as you're talking with them. Like, oh, what's your LinkedIn profile? Let's connect. As you're talking to people, talk to as many people as you can and have good conversations and thoughtful conversations and a call to action. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. What are you looking to do? Let's stay in touch. And having those types of conversations, I think, you're there for the industry event, and you're obviously there to gain information. So attending the lectures is fantastic, but I'm sure that they'll have opportunities for networking, and you want to capitalize on those. Or even in the lecture, if you go in early, before it starts, talking to people. After it's over, talking to people. So, again, finding opportunities to connect with people and having those thoughtful conversations. A 2-day industry event, you'll meet a ton of people if you do that. So I'm excited for you.
And as Loretta just did, and several others previously, feel free in the chat to drop in your LinkedIn profile, your URL. I encourage folks to connect with each other on LinkedIn. We have 71 job seekers on the line, so feel free to drop in your LinkedIn URL. All right, this question was sent directly to me. It says, on creating your target company, I feel like this is sort of like buying a pair of shoes. You don't know unless you try. So how would you know if you want to work for your target company? How do you know it would be a good fit?
So I think that's a great question. And it's a great question when you're exploring to have conversations with people, right? So if you're unsure, you're like, well, I think this sounds like a great company, but I'm not sure if I want to work there. I just want to find out about the company culture. So reaching out to people, again, on LinkedIn and having a conversation, say, I'm exploring opportunities. I think your company and your industry looks really interesting. Do you have a couple of minutes to connect, to talk about the company culture, why you enjoy working there, and starting a conversation that way? And I think that's the best way to figure out if that's somewhere that you actually want to work. Because when you are exploring, it's less threatening for people. They're like, oh, well, he's not going to ask me for a job, or she's not going to ask me for a job. You're really just trying to find out what's the company culture like. And finding out different aspects of that organization, if it's a good fit for you.
So in the chat, Cindy says that Meetup also has good networking events, and I've seen hiring events and job fairs promoted on Meetup as well. Nancy says, do you recommend sending a LinkedIn connection request to a hiring manager after applying for their job? But a job from them.
Yeah, why not? But send a note. So you have an opportunity to send a note. It's not, you don't have as many characters as sending a message, but I would absolutely send a connection request, and then just say, why you're looking to connect. So, and just be transparent. Hey, I saw this great opportunity. I'm really excited, hoping I'm a good fit. Let's stay connected.
Sue asks, is a LinkedIn profile necessary in a job search?
It is not. Not everybody is on social media. I happen to gravitate towards it because, having been around the block, I remember the days before we had social media, and it was that much harder to find a job. I think this just opens up the door. It makes networking and connecting and finding out, who's behind the job a little bit easier.
Let me see here. We're going to wind down, folks. We'll wrap it up in about 5 minutes or so. Denise asks, she's looking for advice do you have any advice to offer for those looking for temporary, contract, or part-time roles? Where do you suggest we find these opportunities? Oftentimes, recruiters are only focused on full-time roles.
So I did contract work. I was actually a recruiter for contract, and then I contracted for a long time. So I'm a big fan of it. So there's tons of agencies out there. So I think it's, depending upon your industry. So, technical, finance, administration, healthcare. So I think just doing a simple Google search of agencies for whatever your specialty is, and you'll find those agencies. I worked for Robert Half for a number of years. There's Kforce. I mean, there's so many different ones out there. I think because you want to Google, you want to have something that's local to your area, and you want to make sure that it's specialized to what you're targeting. And then you just don't email them. You just want to call and say, hey, I'm submitting my resume. Can I talk to a recruiter? Because that's their job. That's how they get paid, is by placing people. So that's what I would recommend. The other thing too is that I've called places where I said, I'm not looking for full-time, or I emailed them. I said, hey, I saw this great opportunity. I'm not looking for a full-time position. When you take somebody on a contract basis? And that's how I got tons of jobs that way too. So you could also look online and asking if they want you to fill a role on a contract basis while they're looking permanently.
And then jumping up towards the top of the chat, Michael says that daily and weekly schedules may also benefit from the inclusion of time for new skill development or current skill maintenance.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I know that finding a job is really a full-time job in and of itself. And in addition to searching for that next position, you also want to be, maintaining, at the very least, maintaining your skills, if not learning new ones. So it is a struggle. So I think a couple of other comments that I think I'm not going to know the context to. So why don't we wrap it there, Kelley? Let's give Kelley a big virtual round of applause. Now, Kelley has permitted me to record this presentation. I will send the recording to all of you this afternoon. Kelley, there was a question in the chat about sharing the slides. Is that something you're comfortable with? Yep. Yeah,
absolutely. I'll send them to you, Robert. And if you want to share them out with everybody, absolutely.
All right, that sounds good. Wonderful. So folks, look for that email later today. Slides, recording, feedback survey, information about our other upcoming programs. We're doing, the SBA is coming in next week to do a talk for folks who are interested in starting and growing their own small business. I realize that's not going to apply to everyone on the call, so no worries, but we do have a different topic and a different speaker each week. All right,
Robert,
so Kelley, yeah, go ahead.
So quickly on that, so anybody that's looking to contract for temporary work, I would highly recommend going to that presentation next week, because there's going to be some really useful information, as far as 1099, or I started my own business and then I decided to contract. So just a plug for next week.
Always appreciate it when the current speaker plugs the next speaker. So thank you for that. And then something I want to plug before we wrap up is, in addition to this group that meets every Monday at 2 o'clock, we also have a more formal networking group that meets on the first and third Wednesday from 9:30 to 11:30, and the second and fourth Wednesday from 6 to 8. And this particular group is for folks who are 50 and over. It's a group that's run by a professional career coach, the facilitator, Debbie Hope. She's wonderful. And this week we're focused on resumes, okay? And I'm going to break some news. Debbie might get mad at me. But in a couple of weeks, for those of you who live in the Tewksbury area, or I would say within 30 minutes of Tewksbury, you can come to the Tewksbury Library and get a photo taken, a headshot taken by a professional photographer for your LinkedIn profile. And it's going to cost you $0. It's going to be free. So we're learning all about LinkedIn next month for the 50+ group. And one of the benefits of being a part of this group is you can get a free headshot. So I believe the plan is to do that at multiple libraries, but Tewksbury is starting that off, and more details TBD, but that's an exciting opportunity. So if you're not part of the 50+ group and you are 50 and over, make sure you join. There'll be information about how to join in the email I send later today. All right, so it's 3 o'clock. Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks so much, Kelley.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone.